Praise Team, thank you so much. Take out your Bibles, if you would, and turn to Matthew chapter 5. We are... Matthew chapter 5, and we have in a study on the Sermon on the Mount. And we're going to continue that this morning. Last week, we began, I want us to look at verse 13. Now, we looked at this some last week. I'd like to introduce this and then finish this and look at some things that we weren't able to get to and close this out, because this is just so important for where we are as a church, where we are as individuals. We looked at all of the Beatitudes, and here's the idea. What we're going to come to in verses 13 and 13 through 16 is basically Jesus is saying, by having these characteristics of these Beatitudes, we're going to be able to we're going to be able to have an impact that will go beyond ourselves and impact the world. If you say, I can't tell you how many times that at different times, have you ever said, Lord, I want to make a difference. I want to make a difference. This older we would have people in the DR, some guests, and they would say that's an English phrase. I want to make a difference. That's hard to really translate into Spanish, and yet you can't really translate. Voy a hacer una diferencia. No, that doesn't make any sense. And so we translate that in Spanish. I want to make an impact. I want to have an impact. I hope that's what we're going to talk about. How you can make a difference, to have an impact in your family, an impact in the community, an impact in the church, that, well, I want to make a difference. And if you want to make a difference, it begins with these characteristics that we studied in the Beatitudes. By the way, those are not natural. It's not natural to be poor in spirit. It's not natural to be meek. It's not natural to be a peacemaker. It's more natural to be angry at someone and go blow things up. It would be more natural to avoid the idea of peacemaking, help people to find peace with God through evangelism. It would be more natural for us to say, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not going to share my faith. See, there are so many things about having these Beatitudes in our lives and living by them help us to make a difference. And so we come after that. Jesus finishes with that, and he comes to these two. We call them the similitudes. They're really two metaphors. And as we look at these two metaphors that we see here in Matthew chapter 6, the first one that we see deals with a concept that he says, you are the salt. You see verse 13. He says, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It's no longer good for anything, except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. Now, there's a number of things that, we look at this and we think of salt, what salt could be used for. What does salt do? And we talked about this last week. It is used as a preservative. I told you about my country ham. By the way, Miss Sherry, we brought that country ham. It's in the freezer. Okay. And I've been making, we had some of that I decided to make for Helen. Helen is my mother-in-law, Maria, and I care for her. And we decided, after Sherry told me that you have to soak it. Oh, I didn't know that. So we took it and soaked it. Listen, I soaked it for 2 hours, and it's still salty as all get out. Yes, sir. What? Okay, I'm going to have to get more directions. I see, but it's sliced. It's already sliced. We took it down to the pig. They sliced it, and we put it in water and soaked there for 2 hours. I said, wow. And, and they did that in order to preserve it. That was the way they did things back, 100 years ago, before refrigeration. And so there is a point that we, as Christians, there should be a preserving quality about us. That is true. There is something that I joke with you about how the ladies in our concession stand would put extra salt in people's popcorn to make them get thirsty, so they would come back and buy Coca-Cola. That was pretty smart. And there should be some things about us that when people are around us, they become thirsty for the Savior. That they want to be a part of this, of what they see in us. But here, specifically, Jesus deals with the main characteristic, and that is the flavor. He says, look, if you're the salt of the earth, and the salt has lost its taste. Now, the word for something that's tasteless is the word insipid. You say, ooh, that has no taste. That's not a word that I use all the time. Actually, my wife uses that word all the time. And she'll use it and say, and she's cooking something, she says, oh no, this is still insipid. I said, okay, that's not one of the words that I use all the time. In fact, the first time she used it, honestly, I didn't go look it up. And because I just don't use that word. But after she used it a few times, I said, that's a great word. But now, the idea that it just has no flavor. Now, if you look at this, our problem, the first purpose that Christ says here, our first purpose is to be a positive influence upon the world. And in order to do that, in order for this salt to work, I have some salt down here. And I brought several things with me today. And in order for this salt to work, it just, one of the things you see about it has to be salty. Now, can you imagine, let me get a few things out of my bag here. Here's my salt. Are we still working? Okay, that's good. Can you imagine if this salt just wasn't salty? Now I'm going to take, Miss Sherry said it was okay for me to take this and throw this out. No, I'm not going to do that. Okay, yeah, this salt is good. Okay? Can you imagine doing that if you had tried something with salt and you say, it has no, is that salt? It doesn't taste like that. Now, I told you, scientifically speaking, from science perspective, it's impossible to have salt that's not salty. That's a chemical impossibility. If it's not salty, that means it's not salty. But here's the thing about it. This, when we read about this here, the idea is if it's not salty, then that means there's something that here, this has become, this is something else. By the way, salt is such a good, you could keep salt on your shelf. Salt has no shelf life. Right. It has no shelf life. That's great. When I was a widower, I guess I had been a widower for about 4 years, maybe 5. And my son, or my daughter-in-law, came and visited me in Atlanta. And I came home one day, and my daughter-in-law said, "Dad, I went through your cabinets, and I've thrown out all this food that you had." "Oh, why?" "Because it's all been expired for like 7 years, Dad." "Oh, well, okay." And so I never paid attention to anything that has a shelf life. I just, it's there. What shelf life is? Okay. I pick up something. Except milk. No, it's milk. No, it's a good man. But if it's anything else, now my wife, first thing she picks up, she looks, "Oh, we can't have that. I have to throw that away, shelf life." I didn't even know that things had an expiration date on them. But now there is no expiration date, or if they put some on there, sometimes the FDA requires them to have some things on there. But for salt, it never goes bad. You don't have to worry about anything, bacteria getting in it, nothing. Salt is such a stable substance that it never goes bad. I can tell you there's some great things that you could think of how we could apply that in our lives. That just with having Christ in among us and how it keeps us and what its preserving influence, that's important that we can count on. But now here's the deal. Here, we can count, if this does not have a salty taste, then it is not salt. And when it is true, there's some discussion about this passage on what it's really teaching, about how you let things in the world and it becomes perverted, and pretty soon that ruins the taste of the salt. And it is true that the salt that they have there in the Palestine area in Judea, they got from salt marshes there around the Dead Sea, and many times that would have gypsum in it. Gypsum is that white powder that you get from sheetrock. Imagine with their sanding sheetrock down and all that powder, you throw that in here, and it all looks the same, but it doesn't taste the same. And so But can you imagine, though, if it has that taste, it's really not salt. Now, can you imagine, though, using this? I think there is a quote. I gave it a quote from Tozer about it's only because there are so many savorless Christians that the value of the church as a conservative influence on our society is so little recognized. You know, you think about the impact the church had in Jesus' time. Jesus, the church, we read about the church in Acts, and what that church did was amazing. Those churches, those Christians, they changed the world because they decided to be salt and light. Today, we are just, so many times we've just become a community of believers. We love, you know, Baptists, I think it was, I can't remember who it was. If you want to be a good Baptist, you know, if you want to be a member of Blue Creek, you know, one of the important things is you have to have a 9x13 casserole dish. You know, because we eat, you know, we love to eat, and that's important to us. By the way, fellowship is an important part of the church. It's not God's design that you be off on your own and think that you can be sufficient dealing with everything on your own. You need the fellowship of other believers. But the issue here for us that Christ is talking about says, hey, I want you to be salty. That is, we should have a flavor. The flavor of Jesus Christ or Christianity should be evident. And then we can't keep it all to ourselves. We have to spread it out. It has to be sprinkled. So this question of losing its saltiness, it's not about a loss of salvation. I told you, it's not about saying that we can set this here, you can it's going to change scientifically. If something is salt, it's always going to be salt. I think that one of the things with this that we should see and to realize with this is that perhaps this is just meant to be something that is rhetorical. I'm going to use this again. Perhaps this whole discussion wasn't something that was designed to be scientific and tell you that you could lose your salt. It's something that was designed to be rhetorical. Imagine this. Jesus had used different rhetorical statements and questions before where he wasn't looking for an answer. He just used this as a statement to help teach something. For example, Jesus says, here's a rhetorical statement. He says, hey, which one of you, if your son asks for a fish, that you'd give him a stone? Now, was he saying that someone was actually going to give him a stone? No, it's a rhetorical thing. Who said if you asked for bread, that you'd give him a serpent? No, it was something for you to think on how this fit in. Of course not. That wouldn't work. We would never do that. It was something that was there to make you think. I wonder, a while back, my wife cooks almost, sweet, we cook almost everything without salt, right? Yeah, because she tries to control her salt. So she'll cook things. And so I said, darling, it's not a problem. I can always put salt on it myself. So she'll cook it the real healthy way, and then I'll fix it. And so, but there was, I think we made some chili. She made some chili. It was really good. And she made some chili. But she said, oh, this did not turn out all right. I said, put some salt on it. After you put salt on it, it worked, right? She said, she put salt on it. I said, hey, that's pretty good. You know, because the salt makes a difference. Imagine now if you had some, you put some salt on it, you say, it tastes the same. Put some more salt on it, tastes the same. Put some more salt, I'm not shaking the chair. I'm just, and put some more salt on it, you taste it, tastes the same. You say, that salt just isn't worth it. It has no value. It's not accomplishing its purpose. Imagine who would want to put salt on their food if it didn't improve the taste. And yet many times we have Christians that's one of your purposes. To help to have this impact on the world so that we create this knowledge where the world becomes more interested in Jesus because of us. But sometimes we've let the worldly influence become so great that they can't tell the difference between people in the world and us. I heard someone say, let's see if I hadn't thought of this quote until just now. I can't remember how this goes. And I don't know if this is exactly where I would be, but I think the quote goes something like this: the church, the world, and the world has gotten very spiritual. They've got all these things that are very spiritual, and I think that's what this quote wrote. But it's not necessarily the right thing. They're just spiritual. They'll tell you, "Ooh, I'm very spiritual," and there's no telling what they mean when they say that. But the quote, as I remember, is, the world's gotten so churchy, and the church has gotten so worldly, that sometimes it's hard to tell the two apart. We have to be very careful. And listen, hey, we're not talking about music. We're not talking about Bible versions. We're not talking about any of that stuff. We're talking about what really matters, God's Word. About the Word. We're following God's Word as Christians. And we're saying, hey, this is not where I spent a little time with one of our, with Charles McKinney this past week, who's a friend of Liberty. And they were talking about how in different places people love to fight over music. Christians love to fight over music. And, and they think that becomes a spiritual thing. That's not what we're talking about here. Okay? What we're talking about is things of God's Word, and we let worldly priorities, we let worldly philosophies. Remember, that was the warning of Paul in Colossians. Be careful of these worldly philosophies that will get in. I'm telling you, they sneak in. And so as a result of that, we become so worldly. We've lost our saltiness. And then, so we have to do something about fixing that. We need to go back to where, and notice here, if Christ says, look here, if this salt was no good, you've tried it on your food and it didn't work, what would you do with it? Would you throw it out? Yeah, that's what Christ is saying. I mean, you can just throw it out. Now look, trash in our days and trash in their days are two different things. Okay? They would just throw it out. Everything went out on the street. And so the idea of this thing, there's no value to this. You just throw out. By the way, that same idea Jesus uses in John 15 when he talks about, hey, for those that don't abide in me, they're cast out. They're cut off, cast out. Now, it's like he does the parable of the vine. It says every vine that starts to bear fruit, he cuts it off, casts it aside. It's of no value. That's the same. Look, I remember being a young man, I think I mentioned this last week, that I heard a pastor talk about how, look, God has a plan and a purpose for you. Hey, this is one of our purposes. To have an impact on the world, that we would have an impact on where people would want to come to the Savior because they see Him in us. Do they? Are we accomplishing that? I remember a pastor said one time about talking about your purpose. You know, if you don't accomplish your purpose, there'll come a time God says you're not going to end up going to hell. If you're saved, you're saved. But God can say, you know, I can't use you and sit you over here on the shelf. And I thought, oh Lord, I remember afterwards coming forward and praying and said, Lord, I want you to do that with me. Please don't put me on the shelf. I want you to use me in my life. I said what many of you said, Lord, I want to make a difference. Please use me. When I met my wife, we were on our first date. You know, we're trying to figure all this out. And so we're on the first date, and I'm trying to get to know her a little bit. And I could tell a few things. I was, you know, in finding out that she was from Ecuador, and that she had been a widow at that time for 15 years. And I wondered, why in the world did you stay in the U.S.? Why didn't you go back? Well, then you had, that's where you're from. Did you have people here that you knew? No. Did you have any help? No. Well, why didn't you go back to Ecuador where your family was? What caused you to stay here? And you know, when she told me about, you know, she had prayed about it, felt like she wanted Anna to grow up in the States and felt that was best for her to go to college here. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, Anna was my purpose. Anna was my purpose. And I said to the Lord, you know, Anna's getting ready to graduate, Lord. So that's my purpose. So, you know, if you don't have anything for me, I guess you could take me home because I'm done. Now the Lord knew that she had a bigger job coming. I'm that bigger job. and so, but no, that's the idea. Here, look, can imagine though God saying, "Hey, I got a purpose for you," and not doing it. Imagine, John, that you get a mission from your commander that you're going to go over and you're going to do this, and you say, nah, you know, if I get around to it. That just doesn't happen. Well, I don't think so. That's not, there'd be immediate changes that take place. That's just not going to happen. We have to realize we have a purpose, and being salt, that people having an impact on our world, making a difference, is one of those purposes. If we have that savor of the 8 Beatitudes, we're going to positively impact others. So to say, Lord, help me then, because I can tell you that that's not something that we can do easily on our own. We need God's help. But then it says, not only are you salt, but you're also light. Look what it says in the next verse. In verse 14, it says, you are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. Light, this is our second metaphor. Now this one is different. And we're going to see that as we come to the ending. We're going to compare these two metaphors. But notice here, the metaphor of light, it is used regularly in Scripture. Think of all the things in Scripture that we're told, hey, that's a light. First, we're told God's Word is a light. Psalm 109, or 119, 105. Your Word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. There's a light, God's Word. We're told, number 2, that Christ is a light. Christ says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. John 1:4, in him was life, and the life was the light of men. So Jesus was light. Then we move on. We're told that the gospel is light. In Ephesians chapter 5. I'm sorry, 2 Corinthians chapter 4. The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. Here, so we have the light of the Word, the light of Christ, the light of the gospel, and then we're told that you are a light. We read that here in Matthew. We're also told that same thing in Ephesians chapter 5. For you were once in darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Live as children of light. For the fruit of light consists of all goodness and righteousness and truth. So we're light. Now, there's let's do this. Our light, a couple of things. Aaron, could you help me? I need your help. Come here. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, come on. Come on. Come on, you got to help me. Mama, come. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Now, this is easy. It's not hard. It's easy. You just take the whole text. Okay? You got it? Okay. All right. Now, I don't know how many watts this is, and my eyes won't see that well enough, but that's okay. Okay? Now, you got it. Okay. All right. Now, Aaron has the light bulb. Okay? You can see it there. Okay, Aaron, hold it up so they can see it. Hold it up. That's right. Hold it up higher. Okay, that's good. All right, you got it? Okay, now, turn it on. Turn it. Light. Go ahead and turn it on. What are you doing? Just turn it on. Just turn it on. Can you turn it on? What's the matter? What's the matter? What's it? Tell me what's the matter. You have it on. You don't have electricity in your body. Well, that's a problem. Okay, go ahead. Thank you. You know, here's the thing. Here we have a light. You know the thing about this light? It's not worth anything unless it's connected to a power source. Amen. You understand that we as Christians, we can't be light unless we're connected to a power source. That's the first thing we need to see. So our light has to be connected. Second thing we need to see about this light is that it has to be visible. Here is can you see that? Is that working? Can you see that? Is it visible? Now, see, that doesn't work. And see, here's the thing. Nobody, the summer before I met Maria, I had decided, I do some scuba diving. I love scuba diving. And that summer, I had decided, I was visiting my son up in Michigan, and decided, hey, I'm going to be there. This is the perfect time for me to dive the Great Lakes. I'm going to dive them all. So I dove in Chicago, in Lake Michigan, drove up, spent some time with my children, went up to Lake Superior, dove there. It is very cold, by the way, 37 degrees in the water. I have a dry suit, so it's too cold. And I have some funny stories about that I'll tell you later. And then I went over to Lake Huron, dove the Tobermory in Lake Huron. Then went over, I couldn't dive in Lake Erie, because there was no one diving there. went up to Lake Ontario, and dove in Ontario several times, and then went up to the St. Lawrence River, and I dove the St. Lawrence River. Now, here's the thing, and all of those were shipwrecks. There's all these shipwrecks, tons of shipwrecks out there. And I was in the St. Lawrence River, and there was this ship there that had been captained by John Wesley Smith. It was wrecked and sitting down in the boat. It had been filled with coal, traveling from Buffalo to some part of Canada. And it was a wooden ship, open hull, one of those big, solid, open hull wooden ships. And it had been filled with coal when a storm came up out of nowhere and sunk it. But now it is sunk upside down. And so the hull is on top. And so, but it's broken in the back. And so I was diving, and I had my flashlight. And I looked in there, there's a big hole there, and I looked in and said, well, that's kind of cool. I think I'll go in there. And so it had these big mounds of coal. And I went up over the first mound of coal and down, and kept going, next one over, kept going, went all the way up to the front. I'm looking around, and just about that time, my light went out. Seriously. And you know, if you're, imagine, and it's dark, and I couldn't see. You put your hand up, and I said, I mean, you could not see anything. And I said, I'm in trouble. I'm 50 feet below the surface, stuck in a boat, and without a light, and I can't find my way out. And it hit me, wait a minute, this is a wooden ship. I could put my hands on the wooden parts, and I can tell which way it's facing, and I'll just follow that back. And I'm trying to do that when it hits me. Wait a minute, you dummy, you have an extra light right here. And because if you're doing that, you always carry double lights just for protection against this kind of thing. And so I opened up, took the other light out, turned it on, and said, you know, there is something so comforting when it's dark. Some of you spoke with Jeffrey a while back, and you said, Jeffrey, this parking lot is really dark at nighttime. We need to have some extra lights put out here. And so now, I mean, that parking lot is lit up. We could play baseball out there at nighttime. Well, maybe not. But light makes a difference because you can see. All of a sudden, things are visible. You know, and as Matthew was writing here and quoting Jesus, he says, you know, if you have a city that's on top of a hill that's lit, it can't be hidden. You're going to find it. You can't hide it. It stands out. Do you know, at nighttime, if we're here in the city and you're going to look up at the stars, do you know they're hard to see in the city? We call it light pollution. But if you leave the city and go out to the country, where there aren't so many lights, you look up the sky, what do you notice about the stars? Oh man, there's more of stars out here. No, there's the same number of stars, just you can see them. That is the power of light. Light dissipates darkness. You don't have to do anything about it. All you have to do is turn the light on and darkness is gone. We are told that we're supposed to be light. So the first thing about it, if you are light, you're going to be visible. The second, we need to be connected. We need to be visible. Notice here it says no one's going to take this thing and hide it under a basket. Who would? And we take this. And when I was stuck in that ship, I guarantee. By the way, that light, I wasn't holding it down here. You know where it was? It was up here. I was holding it up high so I could see where I was going to be able to get out of that shipwreck. We hold our lights up so that the light is able to dissipate and cover more area. So we need to be visible. And not only, oh, there it is. And then finally, not only do we need to be visible, but we need to be radiant. We need to be bright. If I stick this lens in the mud and it gets covered with gunk, it's just not going to be as bright. In the winter, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where we have, during the wintertime, all the slush and the snow and the salt, and that will cake on the outside of your headlights. And it splashes up, and because the headlights are so hot, the moisture, the water will evaporate right away, but it leaves that residue. And it'll build up and build up and build up and build up. And pretty soon after a while, I can't see out of these lights. I got to stop and clean them. We have some of those lights that we have today. They're kind of yellow on the outside, and they sell a cleaner where you can go and buff them to clean it out so they can be more radiant. See, when sin gets in our lives, it takes away the radiance. It covers things up that we just can't shine for the Lord like we could before. So we need to be connected to His power source. We need to make sure it's visible. We're going to show people on purpose. And then we've got to be radiant. We can't do those things apart from Christ. And by the way, notice here, it says here, in the same way let your shine before man, so that they may see your good works, the good things. And notice they don't give glory to you. They give glory to the Father. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Look at this salt and light. They both express a similar function. We want to make a difference. We want to do something. Salt and light do it different ways. Salt does it internally. Let me show you this. Here is Gabby. Come here. All right, you can sit right there. I'm going to come here. Use something. Put around, turn around so all these people can see your beautiful face. All right. Now, that's just water, right? Taste that. Yeah, taste it. How's it taste? It's water. Water? I didn't hear you. What's it taste like? Water. Oh, okay. Okay. Now, if I put this in here. Oh man, sometimes these hand showers, it'll be a pain. Okay? Let's stir that up. Is it all stirred up? It's all stirred up. So that you can't. Now, here's the question. No watch. Can you see the salt? Look at the salt that's in there. You got it? You have some salt? You see it? You see it? You see some? Well, I told you to stir it up. Man. Okay. Now, do you see the salt? You sure? You don't see it? Can you see any salt in there? Is it in there? How do you know? But you don't. There's no evidence. If I had this glass and another glass that had no salt in it, was just water, would they both look the same? Yeah, they do. They both look the same. You can't tell. Okay, this is yours. Okay. They both look exactly the same. What's the only way that you can tell that that's salt water? Well, taste it. Let me know. Is there salt in there? She's mad. Okay, so is there salt in there? Okay, I'm sorry. What's that mean preacher that gave you salt water? Here you go. I got you covered. All right. Here you go. Take that with you. Okay. I didn't drink any of it. You can take it. Try not to touch your lips. Okay. Here's the thing about salt. You know what? Here's the deal. Hey, it's all internal. You can't see it work. It works quietly. I'm telling you, if you can have an influence of salt and you don't know you're making a difference. And so what's the tendency is you tend to say, I'm not making any difference, and after a while, you think there's nothing important in what you're doing. I tell you, just keep on going. Don't quit. It acts quietly. You're not even tell it's working, but it is. Look at light. Light operates, however, it's open. When it operates, you can see it. It's clear. Oh, I can see that light. Okay? It's clear. So what we're saying is, look, this salt is passive in the way it works. The light is active in the way it works. But both of them need for the light to work, for you to be a light for Jesus Christ, it means not just that I'm going to live in front of people in a way that I can be salt. That if you're going to be light, you're going to have to show them the way. That means that you're going to have to share your faith. You want something that will revolutionize our church? Share your faith. Evangelize others. Bring them to the Lord. I want to invite people to my church. Use the True Life cards. Use something. Inviting people to the church is an important thing, but I'll tell you there's something important, more important. That's inviting them to the Lord. And so that's what we need to do. Now, this, in the past, well, I'm going to show you this before I show you that. Let me show you. How is this impact clearly seen? How have we seen this in the past? Our nation, people that decided to be salt and light, this can be clearly seen in our nation. There was a group of men, three well-known individuals, John Wesley, George Whitefield, and Jonathan Edwards. All historically, they were preachers, and they were preaching at a time before the American Revolution. From their influence, our country had what has become known as the Great Awakening. These men, they weren't just people that shared the gospel and preached on Sunday. They lived it. Because they did, they had an incredible influence. Men such as George Washington, Monroe, John Adams, Hamilton, and Benjamin Franklin all spoke of the influence of these men upon their lives. Not just from the messages that they preached, but from the lives that they had and what they spoke with them about. Because of that, a group of men, their way of thinking, these men, even if some were Christians, some were not. But even if they weren't Christians, they had developed some Christian thoughts because they were around people that were salt and light. They met to form our Constitution, at a constitutional convention. And the famous story that comes during that time, when they're meeting to develop this, and these framers of our Constitution, they're getting together, and Benjamin Franklin stands up at that time. Listen, Benjamin Franklin, from everything we know about him, he's not someone we're going to hold up as an example for a Christian. He's not a Christian. To our knowledge, from his life, we would think he was. But here's what Benjamin Franklin says. He says, I have lived, sir, a long time, and the longer I live, the more convincing proofs I see of this truth, that God governs in the affairs of men. And if a sparrow cannot fall to the ground without his notice, is it probable that an empire can rise without his aid? I therefore beg leave to move that henceforth prayers imploring the assistance of heaven and its blessings on our deliberations be held in this assembly every morning. Phew. Wow. Can you imagine if any of our politicians would say that today? But George Washington's not a Christian. Where did he come up with this? He came up with it because one of his best friends was George Whitefield. And Whitefield talks about trying to bring Franklin to the Lord when he shares his faith and lives his faith in front of Franklin every time. And the impact is that although he may not have got to Franklin in some ways, he is enough salt that he impacts his thinking. For that reason, our country has a constitution that I believe God answered that prayer. Amen. And gave us a constitution that's lasted over 200 years without just some amendments that have been added to it. That is amazing. My wife from Ecuador, where they changed the constitution regularly. We were in the Dominican Republic, where they change it all the time. We're going to have a new constitution this year. It's changed all the time. You want to make an impact? It's going to take some prayer. Here's what, there's a song that Joy Williams sang years ago. The words go like this. Is the face that I see in the mirror the one I want others to see? Do I show in the way that I walk in my life the love that you've given to me? My heart's desire is to be like you in all that I am and all that I do. Do they see Jesus in me? Do they recognize your face? Do I communicate your love and your grace? Do I reflect who you are in the way I choose to be? Do they see Jesus? Do they see Jesus in me? That's what we want. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, tonight, this morning, only prayers, Lord, I personally just want people to see Jesus in me. I pray that would be true in our church, that people would see Jesus here, that your Spirit is here, and you're speaking to us here. Lord, we can have a great impact here in our community, but we as individuals have to stand together and say, Lord, I want to be salt and light for you. I want to make a difference. I want to impact the world. I want to share the gospel, give them the light of the gospel so they will know that we can reflect the light of Jesus so that they will come to our Savior and know the light. Lord, will you help us? Help us to make a difference. Let us be what you want us to be. Help us to accomplish the purpose that you have for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Stand with me, please, as the praise team comes. Thank you so much for being here today. There's a place out on the table. If you're interested in going to the men's Bible conference, men, will you please sign up? So I'll have that this week. I need to turn something in I'm up against a deadline. And so if you'll get that to me to sign up, then I'll know. We can still add others, but I need to do this first group. I think that's all the announcements I have. Thank you, visitors, for being here. It's a joy to have you with us this morning. CJ, could you close us in prayer?
Yes, sir. Father, we thank you again for this day, for the time of worship here with you, and to learn more about you. Father, we ask that you help us to be more salt light, more light in this world, and show others the way to you, that they might experience a relationship with